Hey, how are you? It's Adoption Awareness Month, November. As a society, I feel we know so little about adoption, so we want to take this moment with some of my great friends, my great clients, to talk about the adoption process, the highs, the lows, the challenges. And I want this to benefit those who are thinking about adoption, those who are in the middle of it, and even for those who have successfully adopted. Let's share our stories, everything, and we can all be better for it. So come on in, let's do this, and I'm looking forward to it. So here we are today, deep diving into some stories. It's kind of that real talk, real experience where people are right in adoption from the early stages to successfully having adopted a child. Really exciting. It's November, it's Adoption Awareness Month. We thought, you know what, a lot of society, we don't really know about adoption. When you're pregnant and then, okay, it's happening, and then you come out of the hospital with a baby. Adoption is more unknown. I guess even when you're in the hospital, it's still unknown, but this is even more unknown, I feel like, and as a society, we don't know a lot about it. So we have some good people here with us today. I'll just give a quick intro. I feel like I'm in front of a live studio audience here. They should be clapping like on Ellen or Oprah, but so Amy and Peter Schultz, thanks for being here, and we have Sean and Stacy Toohey. And we have Tim and Jessica Halls, so all at different stages of adoption, but rather than my words, maybe we'll start kind of from first, maybe kind of newest into the process, so you probably don't feel like you're new into the process. We'll start with Tim and Jess, and then Amy and Pete, and then Sean and Stacy. But so Tim and Jess, just for people listening in today. Some people will be your mom and be like, I know it better than anyone, and other people will be like, I've never met this person ever. So just tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then just a quick, once again, you could probably tell us, the start of your adoption journey, the rest of the time, but just like a 1 minute kind of intro to where you guys are at with adoption. So a little bit about yourselves and a 1 minute intro into adoption.
Sure. Yeah. So we are Tim and Jessica Halls. We've been married for 8 years this year, and I think we started considering adoption back about 5 years ago. We had always considered it as an option for us, but after some struggles through some infertility and trying to sort out what we wanted for our family going forward, that's kind of what landed us here.
Over to Amy and Pete. Quick intro of yourselves and where are you guys at in your adoption journey right now?
We're Amy and Peter. We've been married for 11 years. People are probably fairly familiar with Peter because he's in a lot of your videos. We've been married for 11 years. I'm a teacher. We are in the kind of in-between stage. We started the adoption process in 2014. We are currently transitioning a child to our home. So the child's not living with us yet, but we are currently in that stage.
And Sean and Stacy.
All right, so we're Sean and Stacy. We've been married for 10 years now, and so about 5 years ago, we started the adoption process. We had always wanted to adopt at some point. We wanted to try with having children ourselves first. That didn't pan out, and so about 5 years ago, we kind of got serious about it, and we have a 4-year-old son whom we adopted, who came to live with us 3 years ago, and everything was finalized 2 years ago. So his name is Benjamin, and so we are still doing some foster care with with the goal of adopting again. So that's kind of where we are.
Amazing. Yeah. So we have people, just starting, and then you guys successfully adopting, and even still right in it with these guys. And that's always the thing with adoption. There's so many different, methods and fostering, and we'll kind of touch on some of those things. But I thought, hey, to kind of make this light, we all know where it's like if someone's pregnant, there's always these horror stories, right, where someone says like, wow, you look so big, and it's like, did you just say that? Or it's like, is it twins? Or like, oh, you're eating for two? Like these horrible things that are said to people where it's like, how dare you? So what are the things, like what should you not say to someone if they're like adopting or thinking of, like, what are the horrible things, like, and has any of them been said to you? But I just kind of this is just an open question, like what should someone not say? People are listening today because they want to know about it, and so if you're not going to adopt, what should you not say, or what anyone should not say these things? What do you think? Is there anything?
I think people being optimistic rather than pessimistic when you share that you're adopting. I think we've gotten fairly frequently like, oh man, that's gonna be so hard. Like, are you sure you can handle that? So I think just people just being supportive and encouraging rather than making you think it's gonna be a hard thing. Just being, wow, that's great, versus that's so hard.
Yeah, or the statement, oh, I could never do that. Like,
yeah.
Actually, here's more information.
Exactly. Sure.
Or don't ask why the child has been placed into foster care or up for adoption. So if they want to tell you, they will tell you, but that's their story to tell.
I think very much along that lines is like, ask interest in the child as though they're a child and it's just someone that you're meeting, but not necessarily into the personal details of everything that's there. When the child feels comfortable or the parent feels comfortable, they'll share it. If they feel that you've got that privilege in their life, then they feel that you're ready to actually have that information. You don't need to pry.
Yep. Yeah, it kind of puts you on the spot, especially if your son or daughter is within earshot. And so I think one of the important things is to, if you are talking about biological parents or their family that they came from, is to remain positive. Don't be negative. Don't say what went wrong, but just make it a positive experience, because they still have obviously a connection there, and they don't want to hear negative things about their family, right? So.
well, and I think that's sometimes where people, they view adoption or fostering as this saving, or this like, oh, you're doing a really good thing. But ultimately, the child needs a family, whatever circumstance brought them to that place. Like, that's the importance, is that they have a home, not like they aren't their trauma, they aren't their experience. They are individuals who need to be loved and cared for just like every other child, and their story doesn't have to define who they are, right?
I think recognizing that adoption is so complex, and that there's so many different stories. There is a loss attached with adoption. I think not looking at a child and being like, wow, you're so lucky, because I think a child might not feel that way, because there is a loss. There's a reason why that they aren't with their first families or their birth families, and so there is that loss that is unique to adoption. And even if they're in a loving home, there's still that loss that they're not with their first families. And we're so excited, but they might not necessarily always feel blessed or lucky that they aren't with their birth family. It's just very complex.
Yeah, and it makes me think like there's different ages of children being adopted. So what are the types of adoption? There's many different types, and you guys know them best. You've researched it and selected a way that works for your families. But what are the ways of adoption?
So the way that we were able to adopt Benjamin was we went through the local agency here in Waterloo, Family and Children's Services, and we went through a program that was called Foster to Adopt. So the idea is that you would be a foster parent with a view to adopt that child. And so that was kind of how we went about doing it. We were his foster parents first until he became available to be adopted, and then we adopted him. Now I think in Waterloo they've done away with that program, so that's not an option here, but I know that in other agencies that is still an option. So that is one way that if the agency where you live is running that program, that's an option for you.
Well, and just really quick too, because I recently saw an article they're looking for a lot of foster parents, I guess, in Waterloo region right now. So they're still looking for foster parents right now, but they're not doing foster to adopt, is that?
That's correct, yeah. And so I think that specific program was for kids that they had a good feeling were probably going to end up being adopted, whereas they can't make that determination with just fostering. Chances are they're probably going to go to a relative or go back to their parents, hopefully. And so they can't make that kind of inference on that, where you're going into this program and chances are you will be able to adopt the child that you're fostering. So I think that's the key differentiator there. So.
Yeah, usually the goal of foster care is always reunification. If they can get home, then that is the best. Yeah, or with a kin. Yeah,
and that is what the agency is pushing for. So.
And so we've also are adopting through a local agency, but the child is older, so he's already been a Crown ward, which means that his parents' parental rights have been removed through the court system. So because he's a Crown ward, then he's already able to be adopted.
On the route we've chosen is the private domestic. So even within the private area of adoption, you can go domestic or you can go international. And so we chose private domestic. And so ultimately that means that we are working through all of our training with a licensed practitioner. And then right now we're in the process of registering with agencies that would facilitate adoptions. So even within that, there's lots of different, So, and then I guess for people that may not understand the difference with international versus domestic. So private adoption, you're paying for your adoption process. You're paying for your pride training. You're paying for your home study and the agency once you're registered, plus some other costs. And with international adoption, you're looking at about double the cost, plus the experiences of working with a different judicial system, depending on what country you go to, different language barriers, flights, and what you have to do to go to visit the child, bring the child back, and all of the different avenues around that. So we ultimately chose private because we started the process at the beginning of the year and COVID hit, and we decided that maybe this wasn't the year to pursue for us international adoption.
Yeah, that was the question I had for you. Everyone's thinking, okay, international adoption, COVID, have they basically pushed the pause button on that, or is it still going?
I think you can still choose that route, but as far as how far you get in the process would be slim.
The amount of delays and waiting and processing things, it's already a long process, and I think it's just been extended through COVID.
And it depends on the country, because different agencies will allow for different countries, and so if the country is saying, no, you're not allowed in, then your hands are tied.
Right.
Yeah, it all depends.
Yeah, and also too, just to clarify, because it's just like anything, like in real estate, we say, hey, a CMA. It's like, what's a CMA? It's like, well, it's like a comparative market analysis. So like, what is pride training? You mentioned pride training, and you mentioned a home study. So just for people learning, what's pride training in a home study?
Sure.
Is that home studies where you're doing homework or?
Basically.
In a more literal sense, actually.
Yeah.
So everybody, no matter if you're private or public, you have to do Pride and home studies. So everybody might have to help me with the Pride acronym. It's
Looked it up. Parent resource
Information development education.
We looked it up. We looked it up this morning because we thought we're like, I don't remember what it stands for.
Yeah. You did your homework.
Yeah, we did our homework.
Yeah.
Parent resource information development education.
Okay.
ultimately that's equipping all of us to know the ins and outs of working through adoption, and even fostering is a big part of the Pride training. And understanding trauma and the impacts of that on a child was a huge part of that. Attachment.
Yeah, because you often don't realize that even if you're adopting a baby, there's still trauma.
Yeah.
People don't realize that. They think, oh, older kids, that's where it's going to be. And that very well could be too, but there is trauma when the baby is removed from the birth mother or put up for adoption, whatever.
There's attachment work too, even with a baby too, to bond with this new child.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the home study process is a very in-depth study on who you are as a person.
I would say invasive. But
Invasive?
in-depth, okay, that's a little more diplomatic. Yeah.
Yeah, who you are as a person, who you are as a couple, your family history, your financial situation.
Be prepared to learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, which I think, and I mean, I haven't had a child biologically, but I feel like even though sometimes I think Pride and the home study can be a hindrance for people when they first start looking through to become or to adopt, I think in the end it's really important, and it teaches you a lot. And we did our Pride training online because of COVID, but we're sitting through hours of clicking and trying to retain, and when you're going through it, it's like, why do we need to do this? But at the end of it, it feels like, okay, yeah, that was really important for us to do.
I find actually several different aspects of it. I think it'd probably be beneficial for people even giving birth.
Yep.
Yeah. So just like they say, see the world through the eyes of the child, and looking at different developmental stages, that if they're digging through the cupboards, that's not a bad thing. They feel safe enough to explore their world. And sometimes we feel like, just put a lock on that or something, but it's like, no, that's actually a good thing, and you might not realize or think about that.
And in kind of preparation for this too, I put it out there on social media, like, does anyone have any questions? And there was a lot of questions that came in, but one question, and whoever wants to answer it, but, well, I guess if you can all answer it, but it was, how long did this person's, maybe thinking about adoption, but they said, how long did you think about it before, they're just thinking about it, and then, okay, let's pull the trigger, let's start.
We had talked about fostering and adopting before we got married. Like, we had kind of thought that it would be part of our story at some point. We were the same. We tried having a biological child first, and always knowing that we wanted to adopt or foster. And when we weren't able to have a child biologically, it was like we got the news at the beginning of January, and I think 2 weeks later, we had contacted the local agency and we're starting, and that was in 2014. At the time, we didn't know about adopting through Family and Children's Services. A friend of ours had connected us to someone they knew with the agency, and so she kind of explained all 3 types of adoption to us, like public, private, international, and we wanted to adopt through Family and Children's Services. But then we did take a 2-year gap, because when we took the Pride training, they talked a lot about the grief. Like, if you're grieving the loss of not having a biological child, the child the children you're adopting are also experiencing grief and loss, whether it's grief from their first families, grief of the foster families that they're now leaving and moving in with you. And so if you're dealing with your own grief, then you're not ready to take on a child's grief. So the pride training was really helpful because they talked, like Peter said, like it's all about finding that child a family. It's not about them finding us a child, it's about finding the child the right family. So we're like, okay, we're not quite ready. We need to be able to take that time. So if I had any advice to give to parents who are considering is take that time to grieve and making sure that like you are secure so that you're not taking that on, because a child can't fill a hole you have in your heart. That's not fair to any child to take that on. You have to feel whole with or without a child, because that's unfair. It's an unfair expectation to put on a child to fill that, especially as you're working through attachment and that kind of thing.
We thought about it for a few years. Friends of ours had fostered and adopted their children, so we always knew we wanted to do it. It was whenever it was God's timing. Like you, we struggled with infertility for a few years, and then I think a month or two before we started the Pride training, we had found out, like, we kind of decided, like, we're done with the infertility, we're gonna try this. And they happened to be starting Pride training a couple weeks later. So we did that, and that was September of 2015. And then we did our home study and waited a while because we were adopting and for foster to adopt, and so, but yeah, by the time our son was placed with us, it had been, from when we started the Pride training, it had been almost 2 years, so, or a year and a half, I guess. So.
And so, just out of curiosity too, just for people and learning, like, is that quick or fast or?
It's, if you're just fostering, that's a long time. But if you're adopting, I think that's fairly normal. So.
Yeah, for us it took 4 years to get approved. Like we started at 6 years, but then we took that 2-year break, and then it took about 3, almost 4 years to get approved, just because workers had gone on leaves, and unfortunately there's not a lot of funding for family children services, so their departments had a lot of cuts.
Yeah. Like a roller coaster where it's like, this is our worker's been MIA, worker's gone, new worker, like. Seems like a lot of turnover, like, I guess, with some of the workers there. Some of the workers there.
Yeah, I think, well, their department had gotten cut in half, like partway through when we were doing it, and then someone went on a maternity leave, and then another worker just went on like some other type of leave. So we kind of got lost in the shuffle. And then like a community member advocated for us that knew us and ended up working with the agency and said this family has been waiting a long time and they're interested in adopting older children. Like, we need to get this family approved. So then we got a new worker, and from there, and then we also had a loss, like a death in our family. So then then we took some time again to grieve before continuing on. But our last worker, she was phenomenal. She got us she's like, we need to get you approved. So she retired 2020, and we were the last family. She's like, my last thing I'm gonna do is get you guys ready, at least finished. She can't guarantee approval, but she's like, I'm at least gonna get your home study ready to be approved by the supervisor.
So someday soon you can send her a photo.
Yeah. Thank you.
Make her so happy.
Yeah, we did ask because once you have a recruitment worker who does kind of your initial home study, then you get an adoption worker. So when we were matched the child, we said, is there any chance you still have her contact information that you could send her, let her know? So she was able to find out that we were matched the child.
You guys were smart because you're renting an apartment. It wasn't fancy, but you're renting an apartment, just a 1-bedroom small apartment, because you wanted to save money for a house.
Yeah.
And we knew you were going to adopt, but you weren't going to bring a child home to
sleep on the living room floor.
so like, so I'm like, I was looking for a home, like not, like it wasn't like, oh, you're adopting, I'm looking for a home right now. But then I was like, okay, I'm looking for a home for these guys because it's going to be a game changer. Because it's like, you cannot bring a child home into that place. So it's like, you know, so that's one of the things, that's a story I love telling people, and I was so excited about it, right? So
Place?
yeah.
We weren't looking for a home, like we weren't even really ready, but Brian was always looking for us just in case we were ready. And if it wasn't for Brian, we wouldn't have our house right now because we weren't actually looking.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, because the market was going.
The
So
house
Brian,
has doubled in value, but that's just me talking about real estate. So, you know, but even with real estate, it's like getting you guys a home. Like it was, like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, so we were ready to.
Like it wasn't. It was just about that's what I love. Where it's like, hey, with my life, I get to help other people with their lives. Like forget about money. Of course, you have to make it work. Like
yeah.
if I was looking, you know, now the prices have doubled, which is challenging for first-time home buyers, but you know,
Honestly,
like,
at the right time.
but like a life changer. And then talking about the time it took, it's like, well, because you bought your home almost
2016.
Yeah, like 2016.
Yeah.
So now it's 2020.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a process.
It was, yeah, you're kind of going on that it wasn't just a home change. It wasn't simply a location. It kicked off a lot of other things in life that couldn't have happened before that.
Because we had moved in our house in September, and in November we reinstated the process to adopt. So we were only in the home for about a few months because we were reading a Francis Chan book, and it's and like in the first chapter it was like, you don't need God to tell you it's okay to adopt. It says it in the Bible, like just do it. So I remember being like, okay, I think that's God telling us, like we are right. We have a house now. We should adopt. So we started the process like 2 months after we moved into the house.
It's like a blinking neon sign.
Yeah, it was like the book You and Me Forever or something, because they were talking about it wasn't even like the first chapter, it was like the foreword or something. I don't know, like the intro. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. And so we haven't forgotten about you, Tim and Jess. How long did you think about it before you were like, all right, let's do that first decision, make that phone call, send the email?
Yeah, so I think our experience was a little bit different because I feel like we were doing a lot of grieving about the fact that we likely wouldn't be able to have our own kids. So by the time that we kind of found out that it wasn't going to happen unless we took a bunch of different other routes, then we already felt like we were at the place where we could just kind of close that door and step forward. So when we first got together, I think we had talked about, before we got married, we had talked about one day maybe adopting or fostering, and probably about 5 years ago, we'd looked into fostering, done a little bit of investigation on it, and weren't super happy with what we were met with, just because the world changes and the expectations of what you have to say you're okay with and not okay with, and kind of some of the things around that, we just felt uncomfortable. And so we took more time to think and pray and to continue going down our own road of the biological wait. And then finally, I guess it was February of this year that it was like, it's not going to happen unless you do this or this. And we thought, you know what? No, this is God knew that we needed to be told no in order for us to say yes to the way that He wanted us to go. So that's what we thought. You know what? No, it's time. And yeah, so it's been a process of thinking. It's when you're thinking about it, it's kind of in the background. So you're mulling it over. It's not like you're necessarily doing all the exploring, or at least we weren't necessarily doing all of the ins and outs, but just little pieces here and there to kind of make the decision. So in terms of like process, because we went the private route, we had to pick an adoption practitioner. So there's a list of licensed people that you can reach out to, and because of another couple that we know that go to our church, they had kind of, actually it was the people that we bought our house from.
Yeah.
They adopted.
They recommended.
They adopted through Family and Child Services, but they had known about this practitioner, and so we reached out to her and started the process. And so we got our completed home study in August. And so, yeah, we've been kind of in the waiting, thinking that we wouldn't be able to move forward with the process until sometime in 2020, sometime in 2021 was the what was shared, and then last week we got the news that we would be able to move forward with JFJ Hope Center. So yeah, that's the exciting next step for us.
So just even for people thinking, and from just my own thinking, because you're my friends, like so how long do you think it'll take? I know we don't know for sure, but
yeah,
this is another exciting step in the journey.
Yes. Yeah. So once we finish our orientation and our intake meeting, then we should be able to be like completed and part of their system of registered adoptive parents. And then basically it's kind of up to the birth family. So we have a child profile that we've filled out, and we've kept ours fairly open in terms of what we're okay and not okay with, is kind of, which was a whole other hard process to go through. I'm sure you guys can attest to that. When you get pregnant, it's like, well, whatever's coming is gonna come. But when you're looking at a sheet of paper and having to check yes to things, it's not easy. Yeah. So basically, because we have that, then the different birth parents will have what they're looking for, and so if we're matched with them in terms of what they're looking for, then they get our life book, which is basically a little story of us. And they get to look through their stack of life books, which I guess is similar to the public route, and then they choose based on that, and we have to choose them back. So it could take a few months, it could take a couple years. We really have no idea what to expect.
And so like checking that box open, so you're talking about like open adoption?
So
no. Or is it a different?
Yeah, it's different. So I just
this
meant.
This is why we're doing this, for learning.
Yes, yeah. So by open, I just meant like what we're okay. I don't like using the word okay with, but what.
So different.
Skill set to parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's different.
Yes.
I don't even know how to.
Well, it's things like.
Risk. Yeah, risk.
Yeah.
Medical condition, family history, like all those things.
Okay.
Alcoholism, like schizophrenia, Down syndrome, like all the different things that a child could.
Even things like maybe not only having one half of the parent's history, right? Like
Yes.
Unknown history.
Unknown birth father.
Unknown
Yeah.
birth father could be like a risk factor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. The open side is a whole other ball game.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that ball game. So, and just to kind of wrap up that convo, often it's interesting because what kind of shapes our learning is sometimes like, the pop culture. So like, one of my favorite show, like This Is Us. They were in the hospital. They saw a baby. They went home that day with a baby. Like,
Only if we're that
It's not the 80s anymore.
yeah. It's not the 80s anymore. But like, that's like too quick, right? That's too quick. But do you wish it was quicker? Like, and like, you know what I mean? Like, do you? I'm just wondering.
I would say no.
We'll vote on it right now.
I would say no. I would say no, not in the transition time. I wish it took us less time to get through the whole process, like home study and all of that stuff. I wish that time was shorter. But so we're in the transition phase right now where we attended an adoption conference. We expressed an interest for a child that was being profiled. So there was some of his information being profiled. So we expressed an interest saying, I think we'd be a good fit. We interviewed for him. So it was like a 2-hour-long interview. They got to know everything about us. We got to know more about him. But it's been a slow transition in terms of us visiting with him and meeting with him in the community and him coming to our home, but I think it's so important for attachment that it's not like, okay, we think you're a good fit, he's moving into your home tomorrow, like good luck kind of thing. I think someone put it as like, imagine your own child or your niece or your nephew being just taken from their home, where they're comfortable, and just being dropped into a new environment. Like, how would that feel? Or even yourself, like just to be taken from everything that's familiar and being placed with essentially strangers. Like, though we're a good fit, like we're strangers to him. So we've really appreciated our process. It's going much slower because he asked for that, and we think it's super beneficial for that attachment piece, that he's feeling safe and comfortable with us, and like we spend time like in his home, and he's just now recently spent time in our home, but there's been a process, and like we've been appreciating the slow process, so he can feel more safe in our home and feel comfortable, and we're slowly building that attachment, because that's not just going to happen naturally. It takes time to trust people, and especially when there's trauma involved, but he fits really well with us. Yeah. So we appreciate the slow process.
I think in our case, the slowness of the court system was probably the only thing that we were kind of annoyed with. So Benjamin came to live with us when he was 7 months old, and when did he become a Crown Ward? Like when he was 14 months old or something like that? And then we didn't finally get it adopted until he was, what was he, 2 or was he 3?
He was almost 3.
He was almost
so
3.
It was like April.
Yeah. And so while waiting for the courts to finish, you know, you kind of feel like, okay, I feel like we got this, we're good. But there's always that chance where the rug gets pulled out from under you. So that can be kind of agonizing while you're waiting for the courts to finally get everything finalized and done, right? So, yeah. But that was the situation where he was living with us and was living with us for 2 years before we finally got the whole thing finished. So
as far as the familiarity transition part, that's already
that already happened.
Yeah, he's already a Crown Ward, so it would just be finalizing the adoption eventually.
That's right, yeah.
However long that will take with COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, and in COVID, I imagine the courts are pretty much
They're backed up right now.
a dribble kind of with the cases going through, so.
And I think we're still in the experience part of all that, right? Because we've been waiting for the agencies. Now we'll have to wait for the birth parents, and
You are in the part of what I call, and my friend called this, is paper pregnant. So you're not pregnant, but you're on paper, you are ready and willing and open to adopt.
yes, and you have no idea when you're gonna.
And yet when you find out that you are getting a child, it is the shortest sometimes. Like that transition can go very quickly.
That's what we're feeling. We're like, okay.
Yeah. Like when we found out that Benny was coming to live with us, we were actually going away on a trip like a few weeks later, or not even, a few days later. And so he was going to get transitioned to our home right afterwards, because he was young, and so it just made sense. Like we had already visited him a few times, and we had that little bit of connection. So, but it was like a few weeks, and I was like, oh boy, okay.
Well, even when if you're private, oftentimes it's from birth, but the birth parents have already gone a certain duration of time where they've been thinking about whether they're going to do this or not. So we've heard as quick as 2 weeks turnaround, or usually around a couple months. So it's not even like we would get that full term. But you're right, it is that paper pregnancy, but I have no idea how long I'm going to be pregnant for.
It's a very nerve-wracking and emotional experience. So
Yes.
Yeah, we feel very fortunate that all the other stuff took a long time, like to get ready, but I mean, we got approved in March, we attended the Adoption Resource Exchange, which is like a conference for all of Ontario where they profile children from Ontario that are looking for forever families. And that was in June. So like this has been a quick part of the process for us, which is nice.
I think almost in that, like in terms of waiting, that beginning process, I think people really have to fight for, like, because the system is very flawed, I think you really have to like push for it. If it's something you want, it's almost like if you have a health problem and you go to the doctor, right? You have to, if you want answers, you gotta really, because the system is not perfect, you have to really advocate for yourselves, yeah. Or get other people to advocate for you, or different things like that.
And I think what you're saying too, just about the timing, I think there is a level of respect for the birth families in that. Like it's really important for them to have their time, and as much as on this side you're probably like, hurry up, come on. It's like, no, this time is good, and there's purpose in it, and it's just kind of being open to the learnings and what you get through that time. That's important.
It's a huge decision to make as a birth parent.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot about, you know, some highs and lows. Was there any other highs and lows, like, you know, that maybe stuck out in your mind where it's like, ouch, that was like really painful, that low that we hit? Or I don't know, the high, like maybe where it's like, or sometimes it's anticlimactic too. Like, I don't know if it's like, okay, like, Benny's your son, or he's like, well, he's been living at our home. Like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, like, or sometimes in real estate, it's like, I feel like I collapse at the finish line where it's like, it's done. Or like, is there been can you speak to any interesting highs and lows that, you know, not to scare anyone away from adoption, but that's life, there's highs and lows.
One high might be, like Jess, you were mentioning, and Tim, you were mentioning the idea that what are we okay with, like as far as different exposures or different circumstances. And one high, in a sense, was recognizing and fully realizing it's not about it's about trying to get the kid and the family that are a good match. It's not, how do I say this in the right way, is just...
It's okay to say no.
It's okay to say no. If a kid has something that you don't feel you would be a good match for, or that you would not be able to properly assist with or help with or nurture or parent, then it's okay to say no, because saying yes is unfair to both you and them, because they deserve to have a family that can support them in those struggles. They deserve to have a family that can handle those things and be able to nurture them in the way they need to be. Whereas sometimes if we can sometimes guilt ourselves or feel guilty for saying no for whatever reason it might be, and some of those reasons might even seem silly to ourselves or something like that, but that's okay, because you're looking for the right fit for your family and the right fit for that kid to make sure that it's gonna work well for both of you.
I once heard someone say, by you saying no is giving someone else the opportunity to say yes. And I thought that was a really, like, when we grappled with what we thought we had the skill set to parent based on like our support system, because that's huge too, recognizing what support system you have. Like, we have friends here, but all of our family live, like his family's in California, my family lives near Ottawa. Like, we don't have family here. We have friends that are family that we can call on, but we had to really consider that when we were thinking about the different skills, like the different risk factors in terms of a child. I think our high would be like meeting our son for the first time. Like that first initial meeting, like it's nervous, like it's awkward, but it feels like a first date. Like not romantically, but like all those feelings of like, I have no idea, like I've seen their picture, but like I've never interacted with them before. Like, are they gonna like me? And are we gonna be a good match? Like, I know we're a good match on paper, and the agency's approved us, and like everyone's super excited about this. But it feels kind of like a weird, awkward first date, and then it is awkward at first, but then like it really it just became natural and real. And the second time felt great. And by our third visit, he was saying that he was super comfortable around us and not nervous anymore. But it kind of feels a little bit like dating, but like not like in a romantic way, but just in like getting to know you kind of stage. But that first meeting definitely stands out, like has been like super like exciting meeting him for the first time.
I think in our point in our journey, those are highs for us too. Like, I just was so excited when you said that you had a match, and I think that the adoption community, there is a lot of internal support for each other, right? Because you have lived experience, you share with your experiences with each other, and even when we had announced ours, and you reaching out to us and encouraging us, and I think that's a huge high, being able to celebrate each other's successes. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's something special for sure, right? So, like, you can relate so much, and yeah, because like Stacy was a huge encouragement for you, and then it's like, then you guys, mutual friends, but then today's like the first day you met, right? So it's just like, but it's probably like kind of feels like an old friend almost, right? It's like, where it's like you probably feel like you've known her for years, right? But this common experience and.
Yeah, when adoption does, it's like a pretty cool knit, close knit community, like where people are just always there to support and encourage.
And then that leads me into a kind of a cool question someone else had, and it was like, what advice would you give to someone? If I would say, we're considering adoption, like, what would you say to them?
Go for it.
Go for it.
Do it. Absolutely, and don't feel like you need to have a certain skill set or certain personality. Like if it's on your heart, do it. There's a lot of resources, a lot of support out there for families, and I think, just do it.
Yeah, talk to people who have done it as well, because we're chatty Cathys when it comes to the topics. So.
Yeah.
This is one of those interviews where it's not difficult, right? Yeah. So tell me about adoption.
Yeah.
In 1 minute. Not,
Can't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Stacy talking about anything but adoption.
I'm pretty quiet.
Stacy talking about adoption. Well, let me tell you this.
I can talk about adoption. So.
I think another big thing going along with that is people that you trust, because you can hear a lot of people will give negative, people that you don't know or people that you don't trust. Like, you can hear a lot of negative stories about adoption, but I think if you really talk to people that you trust, then you'll get really good support and feedback,
or at least I have friends who have been through the process, who have done it. So, like, for us, our friends were a huge support to us in because they had adopted two of their children, and she actually met Benny before I did, so she helped in that process a little bit too. So, which was that was really cool. So.
Anybody that's currently adopting and is in that waiting stage, I think the best advice that I can give when the process takes long is to be able to just enjoy that time you have with just you and your spouse. Because once that child's placed, everything changes. So I think intentionally celebrating, enjoying that time. Because again, you never know when that's going to happen, when you're going to get that call or email that a child's coming, and then things just move fast. So I know Peter and I just really try to intentionally just enjoy that time when times got hard, just to be really thankful that we just had that time to continue to grow our marriage. And that was a really important time in our marriage of growing. Now that we feel so much more ready to take on to be parents, because we had so much time to just really work on our marriage.
Along with that is changing the mindset of all right, if a kid's watching what's happening in the home right now, they're not gonna. If it's a baby, you got maybe a little leeway. I don't know, but and especially as with an older child, be like, okay, how do I properly make sure the house is clean, make sure all these things. When there's going to be another person here, it's going to be a little bit more messy. maybe I should start working on those habits a little bit harder,
Yeah.
just to make sure that when they get here, it's not playing catch up.
Well, I think mine would be to not let fear hold you back. Like, there are so many things that you could lay awake at night wondering about or fearing or replaying or rehashing, and like Tim, like you said earlier, just advocate for yourself, and if it's something that you feel called to do, then do it, and let the fears, like, obviously you have to work through them, but don't let them hinder you to take the step forward.
Yeah, that's cool to hear you say that. Yeah, often in life, like usually, you know, we're the ones that put ourselves back the most, right? But yeah, I always kind of think like, you know, the quality of your life is kind of based on the quality of your decisions, right? So if you're making good decisions, you know, usually you have a good life because you made good decisions. But but from people in you know, the adopting world, it's good to know, like, hey, go for it. Like, it'd be pretty scary if you're like, don't do it.
And I think don't be like concerned about that attachment piece. I think that's a big thing people have a lot of fear about, is like, am I going to be able to attach to a child that's not biologically my own?
Right.
Like, we're adopting a child that's over the age of 9, and we've already been working on that attachment. And we did not think 11 was the age that we were going to adopt, but but it was the right fit, and but I think, yeah, don't think that you won't be able to attach with a child that's not biologically your own. As a teacher, I mean, I have 20 kids in my class every day, and I form attachments with them, and they're not biologically my own, and it's from being there, being present, being with them every single day. And it's very similar with adoption as well. You will form those attachments. So it just will take work and time, and be ready to put in that time.
Yeah, one of my clients, they foster, and she has 3 biological children. Throughout their process, they fostered 6 kids, and she said, like, it feels no different. Like, even though, like I say, even though fostering, because it's, I don't know, even though I guess with fostering you assume there's going to be a beginning, and now, you know, it's kind of a transition, but she said there was no difference to her, like, the same. Like, she was very adamant, right? It's like, that was her one thing. She wanted to let people know there's no difference. Like, all this, it's like these hurt things, yeah, like, it's just like, oh my goodness, like, you know, but that'd be tough, like, if you're fostering and then see them go to the next home.
Yeah, it's hard. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole attachment thing is a good point. I had forgotten that even before we had, you know, Benny placed with us, one of the things that our worker asked is, you know, do you guys have any sort of fears or trepidation? And I was up front and I said, look, I'm not sure I'll be able to, you know, make a connection with any sort of child that comes in. And that goes away quickly. So almost instantly, I would say, is when you see your child come in and place with you or whatever. So don't be afraid of that portion, because it goes a lot easier than you think. So.
It's good to hear. And one thing that I think that's people are asking and people are wondering is, like, how can your friends and family, like, support you? Like, I know it's a journey, but how can your friends and family support you if you're like, yes, we're gonna adopt? Like, is there, like, what, you know, you guys are the best people to ask, but what can, you know, your friends and family do to support you in adoption? Or like, is there anything, or is there a to not do list and then there's a to do list? Or
I guess the most forward and basic level is ask, hey, is there anything I can do?
Yeah.
I mean, each circumstance is going to be different based on the age of the child and the different needs and circumstances that the child has, as well as where they're living, whether their family's close, whether the family's distant, what kind of family, what other friends they have. Ask. I mean, I think it's probably the most baseline of an answer, but each circumstance is its own circumstance. Yeah.
Well said. People like to complicate things, but it's actually ask.
I think celebrating.
Like, hey, you're a successful person. How did you succeed? Work hard. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let them just talk. Sometimes you just need to have somebody listen and hear the process. Even if they don't really know what's going on, just ask them.
Yeah, I think just being engaged too, like and invested and just excited, or like, you know, just being that positive kind of encouragement.
I think one of the greatest encouragements we've had from our family is just because both of our families have had children come biologically, and so you do have a little bit of that, oh, his Nana or Nana Papa, are they gonna see this baby the same as their grandchildren, like, and just that the love and acceptance of, like, we're just gonna love them just like anybody else. I think that is huge, and also I think not questioning the decisions that you've made, right? Like, because I know on our sheet there's probably things that our family would be concerned about us maybe saying yes to, but it took a big process and it took a lot of counseling and social work and things to get to the point to say, okay, you know what, yeah, we're going to say yes to those things. So I think just trusting the process of what we've had to get to this point, and yeah.
Something you mentioned earlier as well is if it were a biological child, they'd find a way. like if it's you don't get to have any kind of choice whatsoever when it's a biological child, and they would find a way. They would love that child. They would accept the child. This is the same thing, only you have maybe a little bit more input theoretically. Because even if you check those boxes, it doesn't mean that's exactly what's going to happen. You're not creating an avatar on a video game, right? This is a kid, and you're just saying these are the things we're open to. It doesn't mean this is a custom order.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
They'll find a way.
Yeah, and I mean, they mean it out of love, right? Like, they, of course, nobody wants to have to go through struggles with life, but that's just life. That's just reality, right? If we had a biological kid, who knows, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, like we talked about earlier, not being negative, so I think being positive is huge when there's already a lot of negative through getting to the point of adoption, so there can be, not always, but and then the other thing is obviously just being supportive and asking questions and asking what you can do.
And for the sake of time, we'll wrap up pretty soon, but there was a question that came in, and someone was wondering, that's thinking about adopting. They were wondering, is there more boys or girls that are up for adoption? Is it 50-50?
Yes, there are more boys and girls that are up for adoption.
There's more boys.
There's more boys and girls that are up for adoption.
Boys or girls?
Yeah, when I looked at the profiles online for Ontario, I would say it was fairly equal. I didn't have more boys or girls jump out at me. It seemed pretty about the same.
I hope there's more girls, because my mom wants us to adopt a girl to match all the boys in our family. So
That's one of the things. You get to choose.
there you go.
Yeah,
You can pick.
you get to choose, so.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Stay tuned for more news from the Toohey family after this commercial break. Yeah, no, that's cool. Let me see. Does anyone else have anything else where it's like, I wanted to share this, but I haven't said it yet?
Well, you talked about openness, but we didn't know.
Oh yeah. So what's open adoption?
I think there's so much controversy around this, and
We saved it for last year.
yeah, it is a hard discussion to have as a couple, and then to bring that, to come to terms with it and decide, that you're good with it, and then open it up to your family. But basically, in Ontario, open adoptions are the only legal way to adopt. So an open adoption means that basically the child has access to talking to their birth family if they would like to, and accessing certain medical records and family history. And in our case, I'm not sure, it's probably based on, well, it is based on the child that you're matched with, but for us, we're entering this process that we will have a relationship with the child's birth family, and for us, we're looking at it as they will become an extension of our family, and being open to just like all that entails, right?
If they want to.
If they want, well, yeah.
Yeah, and so for our situation, going through the agency, open adoption is the only option, as you say. But in our situation, Benjamin's biological family did not want to have a relationship with us. And so that down the road, that may change. And so we have given our contact information through the agency, and so that door is always open. And so it's a bit daunting, because if that door is ever open, then that changes a whole lot of things. But I think in the end, Benjamin's eventually gonna start asking questions, and so it would be nice to be able to answer those questions and have that relationship with some of his biological family. So perhaps to people outside of the adoption circles, it's kind of a daunting thing to think about. But at the same time, it's not going to be this huge thing when he turns 20. Oh, by the way, you're adopted, and then it's like boom, this weight of the world gets dropped on him. He knows that he's adopted. If there was that relationship there, he could go and have that relationship. It's not going to be this big, huge boulder that's dropped on him eventually. I'll say it again. It seems a bit scary perhaps from the outside, but once you kind of understand, a little bit more that is there for the child and it's for their benefit, then you kind of come around to it a little bit.
Yeah. As soon as we stop viewing adoption as us saving a child or us helping a child, your focus shifts, right? Like it is about the child, it is about what's best for them, so that they don't grow up with this big question mark of, well, who am I really? Like, where did I come from? Because when it wasn't the law that adoptions had to be open, there are tons of adoptees now that are struggling through their identity and different things that come along with grief and trauma and not knowing, and like you said, having a bomb dropped on you that, oh, actually.
Mm-hmm. And there are different ways to have an openness with a biological family.
Yep.
That you don't have to necessarily meet in person if you're not comfortable with that. There are ways to do it, like whether that's sending pictures back and forth or video chatting, or maybe they don't live close by and you can't do it in person, so you send them videos and emails and updates and stuff like that. And
I think it's also recognizing that it's not necessarily maybe just birth family. It could be siblings, it could be aunts, uncles, grandparents that maybe aren't able to, as kin, aren't able to take on raising the child, but still really want to be a part of that child's life. And so I think that's a really unique experience, because grandparents or aunts or uncles can talk about that child's birth parent in a way that I never could. But I like hearing stories about my mom when she was a kid, but I wouldn't be able to give my child information about their birth family when their birth family were children. But relatives can provide that. I think just all those memories are just so important about who we are.
Oh, and I'm just thinking too, because in someone's decision to adopt, coming from trusted people, I know there's different options, but how much does it cost? I know sometimes there's a big cost, a little cost, what's the cost? Based on the different options. We have a Love Lights the Way candle up there. You guys have done a lot of fundraising.
Yeah, so for us, with private domestic, you're looking probably up to $25,000. If you go international, you're looking up to $50,000. And people often wonder, like, well, why do you have to pay so much money? Like, you're getting ripped off, but you're not paying for a child. You're paying for your resources, the people, the home study, all of the social work, pride training. You're paying for lawyer fees, the counseling to make sure that everybody is making the correct decision, especially for the birth parents. You would want them to have the support along the way to, like you said earlier, it's a huge, I can't imagine. So it's a huge decision for them to come to that decision. And so you want to make sure that they're supported through that, and ultimately, you know, at the end that they're healthy just as much as you're healthy, and that it's as good of a...
Now, am I right that the agency's private, right? So it's not government funded, like JFC, the only funds that are keeping the building and paying the workers that work there would be from like when you pay a fee to...
Yeah, that too, yeah. So
donations.
that's the other fees, like when you apply to an agency, when you do your orientation, you pay for all those things.
Whereas if you adopt publicly through Family Children's Services, it is a government-funded program, so your pride training, your home study, there's no fee associated with that because it's covered through the agency, but there might be a wait because you have to wait for an available person, where if you're doing it privately, you can get your home study done quicker because you're going directly to just a private practitioner. I think we had to pay maybe for like our driver's abstract and like a medical history, so like probably less than $100, maybe $200 total, maybe a little bit more. I can't quite remember how much our medical exams cost, but it was very minimal.
It was little fees here and there that eventually added up to things. It was more of like bits and pieces rather than lump sums.
Yeah.
And I think too, for people that are looking into it and, you know, maybe they're not comfortable with the public way and they want to go the private way, there's grants available for people who are adopting privately that you can apply to. Family and friends have been amazing support to us, and I could cry thinking about that just because, like, this is helping us to get to that point, right? So don't let that be a barrier, because when you're choosing something like that,
And fundraising is a great option, right? Like
yes.
Doing fundraisers is a
and
great
being
option.
a fundraiser for my job helps
Yeah.
in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a help.
It's who you are as a person.
Yeah, God knew what He was doing when. Yeah.
Well, any final thoughts? Any last things to share? You guys have been great sharing a lot of info, and we'll post this on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So your friends and family, if now someone asks you, hey, what about adoption? You can send them this video. I was in this video. Check out some of my work.
No, I think for me, I just want to say thank you for creating this space to have these conversations, because this is amazing for us to be able to talk like amongst each other and to be able to share experiences, and hopefully that means that maybe there's a few more kids out there that get adopted because we made space for it. So thank you for facilitating it.
Yeah, for sure, my pleasure. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Sean and Stacy, you guys are amazing parents. Tim and Jess, you guys are gonna be amazing parents, and Amy and Pete, like, you have a son. It's crazy to say it. We keep, it's still confidential for now, but it's exciting. So you guys are amazing parents. So
he's a he's a phenomenal child. So honestly, I would just say, don't let fear hold you back, and talk to people, because we are so thankful for the boy who's placed with us, and he's an incredible child. So don't let any kind of fears, or get more information about children in the foster system. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's misinformation that comes from the media, so don't get more information about the foster system in Ontario if you're wanting to do that route. Our son's phenomenal, and there are phenomenal kids that need homes, whether you adopt privately or through local agencies. There are amazing kids that are looking forever homes, and just do your research, and don't let fear hold you back.
It's probably a limiting belief. It's like, oh, if I'm adopting, there's something wrong with the child. But I read recently, no, it's not something wrong with the child. There's something wrong with the situation.
Yes.
And so no, that's great advice.
You mentioned the fear, and you mentioned media, and don't take your cues from the media. They are literally trying to hype everything up in every episode in which they show things. That means including with the adoption. If there's going to be a birth family, they're going to make conflict on purpose because it's a show. So don't take your cues from there. If you're going to take any cues from media, listen to a podcast by people who've actually been adopted or people who have adopted, who are not trying to hype it up. They're trying to spread information and try to inform and help. That's the kind of media that would be helpful. Don't take it from a drama.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Reading adoptee stories has been hugely helpful for us to think and see the world through our son's eyes. Is like reading stories of children who are adoption. Like when talks about trauma and identity, and what they wish their parents had done and that kind of thing. Like hearing real voices of adoptees. I would say if you could take one thing away, that would be that. If you're considering adoption, is read stories from adoptees.
Well, lastly, if anyone has any comments, questions, just let us know below in the video that you're watching. So I'm sure you guys here today would be happy to reach out. As you already said, it's a passion, and it's your life, and you guys are so much about it. So thanks for sharing your knowledge. Signing off. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.